Hey, welcome back to my channel. Scooter Pie here with a continuation of the 7-inch build. I have installed the motors onto the frame, and in between the motor and the frame I've added this 3D printed corner protector. I'm actually I guess you can say I'm using it upside down. I'm actually going to use them as a dampener because this is kind of a dense, flexible part. So I would assume I'm using it upside down, but it seems to make more sense to me to dampen the vibration of the motor. So I have a video that I've posted prior to this build as far as extending the motor wires and how I do that. So all of the motor wire solder, it's very smooth. I don't have any wires poking. So now I can go ahead and put my heat shrink tubing. So I'll cut my tubing to overlap about that much. And then after that I'm going to add this protective sheathing. Anyway, so I'll add this sheathing to the wires to protect them from prop strikes and getting pulled and messed around. And you can actually push that in. You can see how fat it gets. Or you pull it taut and it gets nice and thin. So you can kind of adjust how much tension or how tight you want your 3 wires to be inside there. And of course you can zip tie it onto your frame. So I'm planning on zip tying here, here, and here. So I'm going to bring all of these wires in under the ESC. So the ESC will sit just like so. And then I will zip tie it to this standoff. And then this will be plugged into the battery here with a strap around it. So I have to cut all my motor wires. So basically I'm going to go through, sorry, this VTX here is just for testing. I'm going to place all my motor wires nice and flat. So I've already marked with pencil on my frame where my ESC pads are going to end up. So then I could take all 3 wires nice and smooth around this standoff with just a little bit of slack. About that much slack, maybe enough to, you can kind of see that little bit of slack there. I'll get a close-up here in a minute. But I'm going to wrap each one of these motor wires around where I want it. And then the other ones will follow. And once I get all 3 of them in position and length, see if I can get this for the camera. See that? A little bit slacked. And then I'll trim all of them to exact length that I want for the ESC. And then I have to take all 4 motors back off the frame and solder all of them upside down. So it's a little more difficult than just pulling them up there and soldering them in. But I really like the look of that being underneath the ESC and very clean and tight to the frame. So that's what I'm going to do. Alright, so the first thing I need to do is finish up heat shrinking my extensions. Heat shrink on there. So I want to push that on there. Make sure that the tubing is over the center. So we can kind of see that. I don't know if you can see the two little bumps, one there and one there. So we know that the tubing's on centered. Just heat it up a little bit. So that's it. Now we'll cut that to length and we'll do all 4 arms like that. Alright. So now that shouldn't unravel. Plus we're gonna have wire ties on there, so it should be fine. So then we get our 3 wires. Make sure they're 1, 2, 3 instead of twisted up inside there. Alright. So we'll do the other 2 just like that. So we got all 4 of them, nice and neat. All the sheathing is on there, so I'll just take all of them out of the way here. Just kind of drop them off the place where I'm working. And now each one of these wires, we'll just get them like so, place them in. I've already marked the frame with a pencil here of the furthest pad. Be the position I want. So I don't want the bundle. I don't want so much slack that the 2 bundles run into each other. I want a little space in between each bundle so you can kind of see this center part of the frame. I just want a little bit of space here. So when I put this other bundle through, they don't rub against each other, which really wouldn't be that big a deal, but just I know what it looks like inside. So do it once. Alright, so all 3 wires are trimmed off. Kind of see they're straight across here. So once they're soldered onto the ESC, they'll stay put, and then behind it it'll be nice and neat looking. So now I'm going to do that to all the wires. Alright, so got them all cut where we want them. So here's our ESC. And now it's just a matter of taking all 4 motors off the frame. Turn the ESC over. So of course this motor and that motor are going to go over there. So now what I've done is basically flip the frame over. Okay, so this is the rear, this is the front. Flip the frame over, take all 4 motors off. Okay, so now before I took them off the frame, I just put some black tape of their position, because basically when you solder it, you don't want to have to fight it. So I have all 4 motors in the position that they were in, the quad, and that's the pattern. So obviously we cut them all like this, and then we flip it over, okay? So now I'll bring in my extra set of hands. I'll get this all clipped up, and we will solder on each motor. So this motor right here, I'm sorry, got kids, so they're busy, so am I. So this is going to be motor 1. So motor 1, these 3 pads for motor 1. This right here is motor 1. because we flipped it, we rotated it around. Okay, so you want to make sure that, I know the first few times I did this, I don't know, it just kind of caught me, like I had to think about it for a second. But when you flip it upside down, this is motor 1. So getting this orientation laid out on the board before you go soldering and tinning, it just makes it a lot easier. So you take each motor off, strip the wire that you need, tin it up, solder it in. Once you're done with all 4 of them, then you flip the whole mass over, attach it to the frame, you're done. Nice and clean. So let me get set up here and I'll get the camera close up on what I'm doing here, because I don't think you care about the stuff sticking out. Alright, so we're set up for soldering this up. Now whenever I solder something like this, I want to make sure that that board is as level as I can get it. I don't like soldering at angles, because if you do heat up another component, if it's level, you accidentally flow the edge of another component, you're probably not going to destroy it. So now we're set up. Hopefully I have a nice clear picture of that. So now we're going to do motor 1. So here's motor 1 going around the standoff. And we're not really particularly worried about these wires other than the order that they're in, because we cut them so that this wire is going to reach out to this pad, and this wire, because if you pull these straight, they're all going to be different lengths. So we're going to attach that one there, here, and there. Okay? And once that's done, they'll fall right into position on the frame. So let's go ahead and pull these off. We'll go ahead and strip the insulation back, and the only amount we're just going to strip off of that wire is just the size of that pad. Alright, sorry about that. I have realized, after looking back at some footage when I soldered these 3 up, my hand was about like that the whole time, so not much to look at. I might do this one here, so I think you'd be able to see it better. So basically, you're just going to strip those wires off. I don't want to flex or bend them too much because they're kind of in the position that we need. So that's the way they're going to lay in here. Just like that. So I just want to take my needle nose here, and I'm just going to bend those down just a little bit. So what that's going to do is just give me a little air gap. So when I solder onto the pads, they're going to have just a little space between there. Just about 275 degrees out of our way here. We're going to put some flux on the pad here. Just a little, I mean, you don't need to put a bunch on there, just a little glazing. It's a good idea to put a little flux on the pads so that your solder will flow to those pads a lot easier. I know some of the, I mean, even the solder I use has a flux core, but honestly, it ain't good enough. I always put some on the pad. See if I can, looks like you can see that this time. So I put a little solder on my soldering iron, touch the pad. I just draw the solder in right to the pad. Now I just want to put the amount that I need. I want to get in and out of here. I don't want to sit on that pad very long. Just put a little bit on. Now see, I've waited too long. I got a little garbage in my tip. Don't want to send garbage or oxidized solder into your pad. So just enough to catch your wires. Now if you put too much, you can just clean your tip off. Just grab the top of that, pull some of that away, and you can also use a little bit of like a wick. So you can push that down in there. Just grab a little bit of that solder off, and it'll soak up into that wire. So then you got that off there. All right, hit the next one here. Okay. Just kind of flow that a little bit better on the pad. There we go. And now I will attempt to do this to where you can actually see what I'm doing. Now this first one's pretty important because you got to remember you can't solder it like that because that standoff is going to hit it. See, the first one here, you have to kind of walk it around that standoff like that, so that when you put this together, that wire is not going to be pinched between that grommet and your standoff. So we just want to get this pulled over, lifted up just a scotch, cleaned up again. Just want to work pretty quick so your tip doesn't get all nasty. And I'm just going to put that right in place. We're going to flow the solder on the wire, and then we're going to put it all together. That's it right there. Now just to double check, take a stand off, push it in there. Hope that's, let me see if I can lift this up just a little bit. Is that better? Let's see here. Alright, so we have our standoff. It's not going to pinch or rub against that wire. So that's kind of important to get that first one placed just right. Got our next wire here. Just flow that in nicely. I tell you what, there's something about it, trying to film this so that you can have a good experience watching it, and then also me not destroying this board while I'm trying to get the best picture for you and see what the heck I'm doing. Alright, this last wire here is always a little bit tough. Make sure it's flowed in all the way. Turn your soldering iron down just a little bit. I always turn mine down to 200 or just shut it off. Now we can take this off, and I'll show you best I can. So now we have an air gap. I hope you can see that really well. See if I can get some different lighting on here. So there's a little bit of an air gap underneath that wire. and that no matter how much you push down on that wire, the exposed part will not come in contact with the MOSFET below it. So then we have all three soldered in. We have our space here for our standoff, so we're not pinching the edge of that wire. And our solder flow is from all four corners. And then, you know, it's nice and shiny, so you don't have a bunch of garbage and yuck inside your solder joint. If this looks like toast, or even better, if it looks like the surface of this, you might want to, you know, reflow it. It might have a bunch of garbage in it. But what I'm going to do is go ahead and get the other ones done. Just want to make sure you keep that orientation. Your four motors are still in position as if they're on the frame upside down. Alright, so the motor wires are all soldered in, just where we want them. And now we're ready to place the frame on. So we have our four motors. Everything's in position here. Alright, so we have all four motors done. Now we can basically flip this over. We have everything in position, and now we can get our frame. Kind of plop it in position here. And we're just going to reattach our motors where we want them. So I'll begin the daunting process of putting all the motors back on. All right, we have all our motors mounted back to the frame. We're just going to wiggle this around a little bit, and right there it's seated nicely. And then we're just going to go around and check to make sure that inner wire is not being pinched. We don't want to, get that wire pinched. So we're just going to go check all four of them to make sure that they're not being pinched. But it's nice and flush. I'm not feeling anything keeping it from seating. So it just kind of popped right in place because, we had everything laid out. So I'm going to check that real quick. This quad is a little big to flop around under the camera. Alright, so all the wires are nice and clean, not being pinched or pulled on in any way, so don't have to worry about vibration ripping or tearing our insulation off. And now I'm just going to go ahead and secure the standoffs. Alright, so we got two of them on there, so now that's good enough for right this moment. Now before we do anything else, I just want to do a continuity check. So we're just going to come in here. We should have a, before I touch this, we should have a beep, momentary beep, as that capacitor charges. And now, no continuity. So that's good. That means nothing was damaged. Let's go back and check everything. Last thing I want to do is stick a five cell battery on this, and it all goes kaput. All right, so we're good on that. And now we can plug in our wire harness. Let's get that seated. So we have that nice and snug there. Alright, my favorite part, the flight controller. I think that's everybody's favorite part, is the flight controller. So that's coming up on part 3, and I'll try to do my due diligence to get that out as soon as I can here. Appreciate you stopping by, and I hope this information so far was helpful. Thanks.